The alien ship moved through the dark silence of deep space. Its long silver body cut across the stars like a blade. Inside, the crew of explorers sat in silence. They had traveled far, past empty systems and dead rocks, searching for something new. For many cycles they had found nothing. No life. No signal. Only silence. But then, the silence broke. A sound, faint but clear, touched their scanners. At first it was a small noise, like a whisper in the void. The crew thought it was a mistake. But the sound returned. It carried shape, rhythm, and strange patterns. It was not random. It was a signal. The captain of the ship, tall and calm, leaned forward in his chair. His dark eyes fixed on the glowing screen. "Where is it coming from?" he asked. A young navigator scanned the star maps and spoke with a voice that trembled. "It comes from a dead world. System 94 Delta. A planet with no life. No oceans. No green. Only dust and stone." The captain frowned. Dead worlds did not speak. Dead worlds did not call. The crew prepared their course. The engines roared. The ship turned toward the lonely planet. Days passed in silence, broken only by the repeating signal. Each time it played, the crew felt a strange unease, as if someone, or something, wanted them to come. The planet grew closer. Its surface was scarred, cracked, and dry. The ship entered orbit, and the crew looked down in silence. Mountains stretched like broken teeth, and deserts spread endless and cold. No sign of water. No sign of trees. Only shadows. "Strange," the science officer whispered. "The signal is strong. But there is nothing alive." The captain ordered a landing. The ship touched down on the gray sand. Dust rose in clouds and settled on the metal legs. The crew stepped out into the silence. Their suits protected them from the thin air. The wind was dry, carrying the taste of stone and age. They walked toward the source of the signal. Their scanners pointed to a canyon. The walls of the canyon were carved with lines. At first they thought it was natural. But as they moved closer, they saw patterns. Symbols. Shapes. Writing. The navigator's voice shook as he spoke. "This is language." The symbols were sharp and strange. They curved like rivers and stood tall like towers. No alien race in the crew's memory matched these signs. They were old, worn, almost buried by time. Yet still clear. Still waiting. The crew's hearts filled with a strange fear. Who carved them? When? And why here, on a dead planet? They moved deeper into the canyon, their lights cutting the darkness. More carvings appeared on the walls. Whole stories written in stone. Tall figures, standing above stars. Battles carved in fire. Cities taller than mountains. A shiver ran through the crew. The figures carved on the wall looked too familiar. Too close. The captain raised his hand and touched the stone. His voice was quiet, heavy with unease. "These figures, they look like us." The crew froze. They looked again. The faces in the stone were not alien. They were human. Strong jaws, 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 feet. Human shapes. Ancient, powerful, and proud. The silence grew heavier. The canyon seemed to close around them. The navigator whispered, almost afraid of his own words. "But humans are new. Humans are weak. They are still young in the stars. How can they be here?" The captain's hand remained on the wall. His eyes were wide. His voice, when he spoke, was almost a whisper. "Unless they were here first." The crew looked at each other. No one spoke. The canyon grew colder, darker. The signal pulsed again, louder now, echoing through the stone walls like a heartbeat. The crew followed it, deeper, step by slow step. Their lights shook as their hands trembled. Then, the canyon ended. A wide open space appeared before them. At the center lay a stone carving, half buried in dust. The crew's lights fell upon it. Their breaths stopped. It was a face. A human face, carved in stone, giant and ancient. The eyes stared forward, filled with silent power. Cracks ran across the stone, but the image was clear. A face of a species that should not be here. The silence of the dead world was broken only by the sound of the signal, steady and endless. The aliens stood frozen. The terrifying truth began to form in their minds. The humans were not new. The humans were not weak. The humans were here long before anyone else. The captain stepped back, his voice low and filled with dread. We thought we found a dead world. But we have found something much worse. We have found them. The alien crew stood in silence before the giant human face carved in stone, their lights trembling as shadows danced across the canyon walls. The signal still echoed around them, slow and steady like the heartbeat of the dead world, and though none of them spoke, all felt the same cold thought: this place was not empty, and it was not dead. The captain's voice finally broke the silence, deep and heavy with unease. "We go deeper," he ordered, though his own eyes carried doubt. The crew followed, their boots crunching over dust that had not been touched in countless ages. They reached a narrow passage, and as they entered, the air grew colder, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Their scanners flickered, their lights dimmed, yet the signal grew louder, guiding them like an invisible hand. The walls of the passage were covered in more carvings, and this time, it was not just symbols, it was technology. Circles of metal fused into stone, glowing faintly with a light that should not exist after so many ages. Strange wires and broken panels stretched across the wall, and when one alien touched it, the surface felt warm, alive, as though the ruins were not ruins at all but sleeping. "Impossible," the science officer muttered, his long fingers tracing the ancient designs. "This is more advanced than anything we have. It is beyond us." The navigator shook his head quickly, fear sharp in his voice. "No, it is not beyond us. It is beyond everyone. Whoever built this was not a new race. They were gods compared to us." The crew argued, their voices low and tense. Some believed another forgotten species had once lived here, something greater than any alien race known. But others looked again at the carvings, at the human faces etched into walls, at the hands and eyes and bodies that mirrored their own. They could not deny what they saw. The images were clear. Humans. Always humans. And that thought chilled them more than the empty winds. They reached a great doorway half buried in rock, its shape unnatural and sharp, like the teeth of a great beast. The signal pulsed stronger here, vibrating through their bones. With effort, the crew forced the stone aside, revealing a tunnel that spiraled downward. One by one, they entered, their lights cutting through endless darkness. The air felt thick, heavy, pressing against their chests. Strange whispers seemed to ride the wind, though no mouths spoke. The deeper they went, the more the walls changed. The stone gave way to metal, smooth and flawless, untouched by age. Symbols glowed faintly across the surface, some brightening as the crew passed, as if the ruins were aware of their presence. At the end of the tunnel, a massive chamber opened before them. The crew froze, their eyes wide in disbelief. Machines towered over them, broken yet majestic, covered in dust but still humming faintly with hidden power. Strange consoles stood in silence, their surfaces cracked but glowing with lines of light. The science officer fell to his knees, staring. "This is not dead," he whispered. "This place lives." The crew spread out, touching panels, scanning devices, their fear battling with their curiosity. Every piece of technology they saw was beyond their understanding. Weapons, engines, knowledge, all greater than anything their civilizations had ever made. "Who could build such things?" one whispered, but his voice trembled because he already knew the answer. The navigator, pale and shaking, spoke the thought aloud. "Humans." The word hung heavy in the chamber. The crew turned, uncertain, afraid, but before anyone could answer, one of the consoles flickered. A hum filled the air. Lights blinked, growing brighter. The chamber seemed to awaken. The crew panicked, stepping back, weapons raised, but the captain held his ground. "Do not shoot," he warned. though his own hand shook. The console's light grew into a figure, a tall form of shining blue. A face, a body, clear and human. The crew gasped, their voices lost in fear. The hologram turned its head slowly, its glowing eyes scanning each of them. Then, in a voice deep and echoing, words formed. At first they were broken, strange sounds that none understood. But then, their translators caught fragments, and the words became clear. You should not be here. The crew froze, hearts pounding. The hologram stepped closer, its eyes burning with ancient fire. You are too late. The stars you think you own were not yours to take. We were here before you. We will return. The chamber filled with a low rumble, the walls shaking as dust fell from the ceiling. The crew staggered, fear rising like fire. The navigator shouted, "We must leave. We must leave now." But the captain stood frozen, his eyes locked on the human figure. His voice was almost a whisper, heavy with dread. This is not a warning. This is a promise. The hologram's eyes flashed bright, and then, in an instant, the chamber fell silent again. The light vanished. The consoles grew dark. Only the steady signal remained, echoing in their bones. The crew looked around, their fear now a weight they could not escape. For the first time, they understood the truth. This was not the ruin of a forgotten race. This was a tomb, and the humans had not vanished. They had left a message. They had left a warning. The crew did not speak as they turned to leave the chamber, but in their silence, every mind held the same terrifying thought. If humans were here first, then everything they knew about the stars was a lie. The alien crew returned to their ship in silence, their steps heavy with fear. None of them spoke as the signal still pulsed in their ears, steady and endless, like a voice that would never stop calling. They had seen the human hologram with their own eyes, had heard the words that should not exist. We were here before you. We will return. Now, inside the safety of their ship, the crew tried to believe it was only an echo, a ghost of the past, but the fear in their eyes betrayed their thoughts. The captain sat at the center of the command deck, staring at the screen that showed the planet below. We came seeking answers, he said at last, his voice low. And now we must decide if we leave with what we know, or go deeper. The crew argued. Some shouted that they should flee, that the ruins were cursed and the message was a trap. Others said the truth must be found, for if humans were truly the elder species, then the galaxy was built on a lie. The science officer leaned forward, his face pale but his eyes burning with strange curiosity. Do you not understand? The hologram was not just a recording. It was aware. It looked at us. It spoke to us. That means the technology is still alive. The navigator shook his head, fear in every word. Alive or not, it should not exist. We should not be here. This is not our world. It belongs to them. But even as they argued, the ship's systems began to fail. Lights flickered. Engines groaned. Controls froze. The crew scrambled in panic, trying to restore power, but the screens filled with static, and a deep vibration ran through the ship. The captain stood, his voice sharp. Status report. But no one could answer, for every system was being drained by something unseen. Then, the signal filled the ship, louder than before, echoing through every wall, every console, every heart. It was not just sound, it was command. The ship's computers lit up, symbols scrolling across the screens, symbols the aliens had seen carved into stone. The ruins were reaching for them. The science officer whispered in awe. They are inside our systems. The crew panicked, some shouting to cut power, others begging to leave the planet at once, but it was too late. The ship shuddered, and a beam of light burst from the canyon below, striking the ship like a spear. The crew was thrown to the ground as alarms screamed. Then, just as suddenly, the ship went silent. The lights returned, the engines steadied, but the crew knew something had changed. The captain's voice was tense, his eyes fixed on the canyon. They want us back. They will not let us leave. With heavy dread, the crew returned to the ruins. The path through the canyon seemed darker now, as if the stone itself was watching them. The tunnel they had explored before now pulsed with light, guiding them downward. None wanted to go, but none could resist. At the end of the tunnel, the great chamber awaited them. The consoles glowed brighter now, humming with power. The hologram appeared again, its tall human form blazing with light. This time it did not wait. Its eyes locked onto the aliens, and its voice came clear and strong. "We see you." The crew froze, their weapons shaking in their hands. The hologram lifted a hand, and suddenly their weapons powered down, dead and useless. The crew staggered in fear, but the hologram spoke again. "Do not fear. You are children. You walk among the ashes of your elders." Its eyes burned with ancient fire. "We were here before you. We shaped the stars before your kind crawled from the mud. We built empires when your worlds were still dust. And we left, so others could rise. But we did not vanish. We slept. We waited." The chamber trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The crew huddled together, their hearts racing. The captain stepped forward, his voice trembling but firm. Why now? Why show yourselves to us?" The hologram's gaze grew sharper. "Because you are too close. Because your kind digs where you should not. Because the stars whisper of war, and we do not trust you with the power you seek." The crew exchanged terrified looks. The hologram spread its arms wide, and the chamber walls glowed with light. Images filled the air, vast human cities reaching to the skies, fleets of ships larger than mountains, armies of humans standing like gods across the stars. The crew gasped at the sight, their fear turning into despair. No alien empire they knew could match such strength. Then the image changed. Fire. War. Worlds burning. Humans fighting among themselves. The hologram's voice turned heavy. "We destroyed ourselves. That is why we vanished. We chose to sleep, so the galaxy could heal. But now, perhaps, the galaxy has forgotten who we were. And perhaps it is time to remind them." The crew's hearts sank. The science officer whispered in awe and dread. "They are not gone. They are waiting to return." The hologram's eyes burned brighter. "Yes. And when we return, the galaxy will kneel, for the stars remember their masters." The chamber shook again, louder, stronger. The consoles glowed like fire. The crew stumbled back in terror. Then, with a sound like thunder, a massive door at the far end of the chamber began to open. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with the promise of something greater than their fear. The crew stared as the darkness beyond the door began to glow. Something inside was waking. The captain whispered the words all of them feared to say. "This is not just ruins. This is not just memory. This is awakening." The massive door groaned as it opened, stone grinding against stone, sending echoes through the chamber like the roar of some ancient beast. Dust and darkness poured out, and the alien crew stood frozen, their lights trembling in their hands. None of them wanted to step forward, yet the pull of the signal was too strong, dragging them deeper into the heart of the ruins. The captain raised his hand, his face pale but steady. "We go in," he said, though his voice carried no strength. Slowly, one by one, the crew entered the hidden chamber. At first they saw nothing but shadows, but then their lights swept across the floor, and gasps filled the air. Lying in perfect rows, sealed inside great crystal coffins, were bodies. Not alien bodies. Human bodies. Dozens of them, hundreds, stretching into the darkness like a silent army waiting to rise. The crew's hearts pounded in their chests as they stepped closer. The crystal coffins glowed faintly, as if still alive. Inside, the humans slept, their faces calm and their bodies untouched by time. They were tall, powerful, their bones and muscles far beyond normal strength. One alien whispered, his voice shaking, "These humans, they are giants." Another trembled, his eyes wide with disbelief. "But this is impossible. Humans cannot be this old. They cannot be here." The science officer bent close to one of the crystals, his scanners flashing. His voice came out hoarse, heavy with dread. "These bodies are older than our sun. They have been here for millions of years. The chamber grew colder, the silence pressing down on them like a weight. The navigator's hands shook as he pointed toward the carvings on the wall. More stories written in stone, showing humans walking among stars, building cities on worlds now barren, wielding power like gods. "If this is true," he whispered, "then everything we believe, our history, our beginnings, it is all a lie." The crew fell silent, fear gripping them tighter with every breath. The captain stepped toward the largest crystal at the center of the chamber. Inside lay a human taller than any they had seen, his hands crossed over his chest, his face carved with strength. Even in sleep, his presence was heavy, as if the air itself bent around him. The captain's voice was low, almost a whisper. "This one is their leader." Before anyone could stop him, the captain reached out and touched the surface of the crystal. The moment his hand touched, the chamber shook. Lights blazed to life across the walls, glowing symbols racing like fire. The coffins began to hum, a deep sound that rattled the bones of the crew. Cracks spread across the crystals, slow at first, then faster, louder, until the sound filled the entire chamber. The crew staggered back in terror, their eyes wide with horror. "No," the navigator cried. "They are waking up." The science officer's voice was sharp with panic. "We must leave now, before it is too late." But the door behind them slammed shut, sealing them inside. The crystals continued to crack, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The crew huddled together, their weapons raised though they knew it was useless. Then, with a sound like thunder, one of the crystals shattered. Shards of glowing glass flew across the chamber, and from the coffin stepped a human. His skin was pale, his eyes closed at first, but when they opened, they burned with a light that was not natural. The crew froze, every instinct screaming to run, but their legs would not move. The human took a breath, slow and deep, and when he spoke, his voice shook the chamber. "So, you finally came." His words echoed in the minds of the crew, not just their ears. The science officer trembled, his voice weak. You should not exist. You should be dust. You should be gone." The human turned his burning gaze on him, and a cold smile spread across his face. "We were never gone. We were waiting." The chamber roared again as more cracks spread across the other crystals. One by one, they began to break, the glowing light growing stronger. The crew realized with dread what was happening. This was not a ruin. This was not a grave. This was a prison of sleep, and now the prison was opening. The captain stepped back, his voice low but firm, though his eyes betrayed his fear. "Why? Why have you awakened now?" The human leader's eyes glowed brighter, his voice deep and terrible. "Because you disturbed our rest. Because your kind has spread too far. Because it is time for the galaxy to remember its masters." Behind him, more crystals shattered, and more humans stepped out, their bodies glowing with strange energy, their eyes filled with ancient fire. The crew clutched their weapons though they were powerless, their hearts pounding like drums. The captain whispered to himself, words none of the others wanted to hear. "We thought we found a dead world. But we have found the beginning of the end." The chamber shook with the sound of breaking crystal as one by one the ancient humans stepped out of their glowing prisons, their tall bodies casting long shadows against the walls. The alien crew huddled together, their weapons raised though powerless, their fear stronger than their courage. The first human who had awakened stood at the center, his eyes burning with a strange light, his presence heavy as if the air itself bowed to him. His gaze swept across the aliens, and in that single look, they felt smaller than ever before, like children who had wandered into a place they did not belong. He lifted his hand slowly, and as he did, the aliens' weapons powered down, their lights dimming into silence. Panic spread among the crew, but no one dared to move. The captain clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stand tall though his body trembled. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cracking. The human's lips curled into a faint, cold smile. "We are the ones who came before. We are the true makers of stars. We are your elders." His voice was not just sound, it echoed inside their minds, heavy and unshakable, leaving no room for doubt. The crew exchanged fearful looks. The science officer, shaking but unable to hold his curiosity, whispered, "But humans are young. They only just began to rise among the stars. How can you be here first?" The human leader turned his eyes on him, and the burning light within them seemed to pierce through his soul. "The humans you know," he said, his voice steady, "are but shadows of what we were. They are fragments, broken pieces of a race that once ruled the galaxy. We were here long before your kind learned to walk upright. We built empires when your world was still fire and smoke. We vanished, not because we were weak, but because we chose to sleep. And now, we wake again." The crew staggered back as more crystals shattered, releasing more humans, each of them taller, stronger, glowing with a strange energy that no alien could understand. Their eyes shone with power, their movements graceful yet heavy with age. The chamber was no longer a tomb, it was a birthplace. The navigator whispered in terror, "They are not ruins, they are an army." The sound of his voice seemed too loud in the heavy silence, and one of the humans turned to look at him. The navigator fell silent at once, lowering his gaze, afraid that even a glance would bring death. The captain forced himself to speak again, though his voice was low. "What do you want from us?" The human leader stepped forward, the ground vibrating with his steps. "We want nothing from you. We do not ask. We do not need. We return to claim what was ours, what will always be ours." His words struck the crew like a storm. Their throats went dry, their stomachs turned. The science officer whispered, "If they return, every empire, every race, every world, none can stop them." The human leader raised his hand again, and the walls of the chamber lit up with glowing images. The aliens saw visions of the past, fleets of human ships larger than mountains crossing the void, human armies standing like gods upon alien soil, cities that stretched beyond the clouds. The crew trembled, unable to look away. Then the images changed to fire, war, destruction. Human ships fighting each other, entire worlds burning in the chaos. The human leader's voice grew heavy. "We destroyed ourselves. We tore down our own empire. That is why we chose to sleep. We hoped the galaxy would heal. But we see now that nothing has changed. You fight. You conquer. You repeat our mistakes. And so, we must rise again." His voice thundered through the chamber, and the crystal shards on the ground glowed brighter as if feeding on his power. The captain swallowed hard, his heart racing. "And if we resist?" The human leader's smile was sharp, merciless. "You will not resist. You will kneel. For we are not asking." The crew's fear turned to despair. They were trapped in a place where the laws of power no longer belonged to them. The navigator whispered to himself, "This is the end. This is the end of everything." But the captain stood taller, his eyes burning not with courage but with grim acceptance. "Then this is the truth," he said softly. "Humans were never weak. They were never young. They were only waiting to return." The chamber shook harder, dust falling from the ceiling as more humans awakened, their eyes glowing like suns. The alien crew knew there was no escape, that they had awakened a force beyond all control. And as the ancient human leader stretched out his arms to welcome his brothers and sisters back into the world, he spoke the words that sealed their fate. "The age of children is over. The age of elders begins again." The chamber glowed with strange light as more ancient humans stepped free from their broken prisons, their eyes burning with power, their presence heavy like mountains pressing down on the alien crew. The air shook with energy, and though the aliens tried to stand tall, every breath carried fear. The captain clenched his fists, his voice tight as he faced the human leader. "If you were here first, if you ruled before us, then tell us why you left. Tell us why you slept while the galaxy forgot your name." The human leader's eyes dimmed for a moment, and his face grew heavy with memory. He raised his hand, and the walls of the chamber lit up again with glowing images, visions of the past written in light and shadow. The crew gasped as they saw vast fleets of human ships crossing the stars, thousands of worlds filled with human cities so large they wrapped around entire planets, and armies of humans standing like titans on alien soil. This was our age, the leader's voice thundered, echoing inside their minds. We ruled not with fear, but with strength. We built, we created, we gave order to the stars. We were the first, the oldest, the true elders of this galaxy. The aliens stared in awe, their fear mixing with disbelief, but the images shifted, and what they saw next turned their awe into horror. They saw fire. Human ships tearing each other apart in endless battles, planets burning under the weight of human weapons, entire systems turning dark as wars spread without end. But we were proud, the leader continued, his voice colder now. We became greedy. We turned on ourselves. Our empires shattered, our fleets destroyed each other, our people drowned in our own fire. The images showed humans fighting humans, whole civilizations collapsing into ash. The alien crew shivered as they realized the truth. Humans had not been destroyed by some greater enemy, but by themselves. The leader lowered his head, his voice softer but still heavy with power. We chose to sleep. We chose to vanish. We sealed ourselves away, so the galaxy could rise without our shadow. We gave the younger races a chance to grow. The crew exchanged shocked glances, their minds struggling to accept what they heard. The science officer whispered, "If this is true, then all our history, all our pride, it is built on a lie. We thought we were the first to claim the stars, but we are only walking in their footsteps." The human leader's eyes burned again, sharper now. "Yes. You are children. You play with ships, with weapons, with power you cannot control. You make the same mistakes we once made. We watched from our sleep, we saw your wars, your cruelty, your hunger for power. And now we ask, are you ready to face the truth, or are you ready to repeat our fall?" The chamber shook as the other awakened humans stepped closer, their glowing eyes fixed on the alien crew. The navigator's voice cracked as he stammered, "We are not ready, we cannot stand against you." His words were weak, but they were true, and the silence that followed was heavy with despair. The captain forced himself to speak, though his voice trembled. "If you return, if you take back the stars, what will happen to us?" The human leader's expression was unreadable, his voice calm but merciless. "That depends. Some of you may serve. Some of you may fall. The galaxy is ours, but we will decide if you have a place in it." His words fell like thunder, leaving no hope of equality, only the promise of judgment. The science officer, his curiosity stronger than his fear, dared to ask, "Why now? Why wake in this age, after so many thousands of years?" The human leader lifted his hand again, and the walls showed visions of alien fleets, wars fought among the stars, entire worlds enslaved, weapons growing stronger with each age. "Because we see the end coming again. Because we see the same hunger, the same fire that once destroyed us. And we will not let the galaxy burn twice. If anyone shall decide its fate, it will be us, the true elders." The crew trembled as the truth sank in. This was not just a story of the past. This was a warning of the future. The navigator whispered, his voice filled with despair, "They are not only our past. They are our future." The human leader's eyes locked onto the captain, and his final words shook the chamber. "You have lived in our shadow without knowing. But shadows fade when the sun rises. And now, we rise again." The chamber felt smaller as more of the ancient humans awakened, their glowing eyes watching the alien crew with cold silence, their presence so heavy it pressed against the chest of every explorer. The captain tried to stand firm, but inside his heart thundered like a war drum. He could feel it in the air, the moment that would decide not only their lives but perhaps the fate of their entire species. The human leader stepped forward, his face sharp, his voice deep and powerful, shaking both the air and the souls of those who heard it. "You stand before the first and the oldest. You walk among the ashes of our empire. You speak with the children of gods. And now you will be judged." His eyes burned brighter, and with a single wave of his hand the walls of the chamber came alive, glowing with visions of the alien crew's worlds, their history, their wars. The crew gasped in horror as their own lives were displayed before them, every battle their people had fought, every conquest, every act of cruelty. The navigator fell to his knees, covering his face. They know everything. They see everything. The science officer trembled, whispering, "They have been watching us all this time." The human leader's voice grew colder. "We gave you the stars. We gave you time to grow. But you chose the same path we once walked. You fight, you enslave, you destroy. You are not ready. You are not worthy." The words fell like blades, cutting into every heart. The crew begged, some shouting that they could change, others pleading that their people were not all cruel, that some wanted peace. But the humans stood unmoved, their glowing eyes filled only with judgment. The captain clenched his fists and stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. "If you judge us for our wars, judge us also for our hope. Judge us for our courage, for our dreams. We are not only destroyers. We are more than our mistakes." The chamber grew silent, and for a moment the humans did not speak. Then the leader raised his hand, and two of the awakened humans stepped closer, their eyes glowing brighter. One of them spoke for the first time, his voice sharp as fire. "Hope is fragile. Dreams are weak. We have seen them before. They end in ashes." The other human raised her head, her voice softer but heavy with sorrow. "Yet he is not wrong. Even in our age, some still believed. Some still tried. Perhaps these children deserve a chance to prove themselves." The aliens looked up, shocked that even among these ancient beings there was disagreement. The leader's eyes narrowed, glowing like burning suns. "A chance," he said slowly. "And if they fail, if they repeat our sins, what then?" The female human's gaze turned cold. "Then they will share our fate." The chamber rumbled, the floor trembling beneath their feet as the judgment hung in the balance. The alien crew stood frozen, their fate dangling on the edge of a single decision. The captain's voice broke the silence, filled with desperate courage. "Test us. If we fail, then end us. But do not condemn us without giving us a chance." The human leader stared at him for a long moment, his burning eyes unblinking. Finally, he raised both hands, and the chamber filled with light. The aliens gasped as their bodies lifted from the ground, held by unseen force, their minds flooded with visions. They saw their memories laid bare, every choice, every action, every secret thought. They felt as if their very souls were being weighed. The navigator cried out in pain, the science officer shouted in fear, but none could escape. The humans stood in silence, their eyes glowing brighter, their judgment unfolding. At last the light faded, and the crew fell to the ground, gasping for breath. The leader's voice returned, colder than ever. "You are divided. Some among you seek peace, others crave power. You are children torn between light and darkness. And children who play with fire must be watched." The crew shivered, understanding the meaning. They were not free. They were not safe. The humans would not destroy them yet, but neither would they let them go unmarked. The captain struggled to his feet, his voice rough. "So, what will you do to us?" The leader's gaze was sharp as steel. "We will watch. We will test. We will decide in time if you deserve the stars, or if you will be cast into darkness." Behind him, more humans stirred, their glowing eyes spreading across the chamber like a sea of fire. The alien crew felt the weight of that gaze, the endless judgment of a species that had once ruled all. The captain bowed his head, his fists clenched. "Then the judgment is not finished." The leader's voice was final, heavy as thunder. "No. The judgment has only begun." The chamber pulsed with light as more of the ancient humans awoke, their presence filling the space like the weight of a collapsing star, and the alien crew could feel their hearts shrink under that endless pressure. The leader stood tall among them, his glowing eyes burning like suns, his voice carrying the strength of 1,000 ages. "You have seen who we were. You have seen what we became. And now you understand why we cannot let the galaxy fall again." The aliens trembled, their thoughts tangled between fear and awe, and the science officer whispered, "They are not just survivors, they are gods who chose to sleep." The captain forced himself to speak, though his voice shook. "If you are the first, if you are the true elders, What do you want from us? The leader raised his hand, and the chamber walls opened, showing visions of the galaxy itself, countless stars blazing, fleets moving across the void, wars spreading like fire, and the young races clawing for power without end. This is your age, the leader said, his voice hard. An age of noise, of greed, of chaos. You burn the stars as we once did. You rise as we once rose. But you do not yet know what waits in the dark. His words echoed like thunder, and the crew felt the weight of something hidden, something vast. The navigator's voice cracked as he asked, What waits in the dark? The leader's eyes flared, and for a moment silence filled the chamber, then he spoke with words heavy as stone. When we fell, when we turned our weapons upon ourselves, we opened doors that were never meant to be opened. There are things beyond the edge of the stars. Things older than us, hungrier than us. We kept them at bay when we ruled. But when we vanished, the doors grew wider. The aliens froze in horror as the walls shifted again, showing shadows moving across the stars, shapes so large they swallowed whole systems, whispers of voices that seemed to claw at the mind. The crew staggered back, some covering their ears, though no sound was heard, only the feeling of endless hunger pressing against their thoughts. The captain shouted, If such things exist, then no race can survive. The leader's face grew grim. No race but one. We were the first. We are the only ones who stood against them and survived. And if they come again, it is not you, nor the others, who will save the galaxy. It is us. His words cut like fire, leaving no doubt. The crew realized the truth. Humans were not only the past, not only the forgotten empire, they were the only shield between the living galaxy and the horrors beyond. The science officer's legs shook as he whispered, Then we are nothing. We are only children playing in ruins. The female ancient human who had spoken before stepped closer, her glowing eyes softer now but still sharp. Not nothing. You are the proof that even in our absence, life continues. But you are fragile, and fragile things must be guided. The alien crew bowed their heads, unable to resist the truth. The captain's voice broke the silence, filled with both fear and defiance. If you claim the stars again, what will become of us? Will you let us live, or will we be swept aside? The leader's gaze was sharp as a blade. That choice belongs to you. If you rise with wisdom, if you learn from our fall, then you may walk beneath our shadow. But if you repeat our sins, then you will fall as we once fell. His words carried finality, like judgment sealed by time itself. The aliens exchanged looks, the weight of those words crushing them, for they understood this was not a threat but a truth that could not be escaped. The walls of the chamber shifted again, and the images of human fleets long dead, of cities turned to dust, and of battles lost to fire, faded into darkness. In their place came visions of the future. New fleets rising, human banners spreading once more across the stars, humans standing tall against the shadows beyond the galaxy. The crew could not breathe as they watched, for it was clear now, humanity was not returning to claim only the past. They were rising to claim the future. The leader's final words struck them with the weight of eternity. Remember this. You are not the masters of the stars. You are not the first. You are not the last. You are only children wandering a garden built by greater hands. And when the shadows return, when the true war begins, you will stand behind us or you will be crushed before us. For we are not myths. We are not gone. We are the first. We are the fire. We are the elder species. The chamber's light flared like a rising sun, burning into the eyes of the alien crew, and they fell to their knees, not by choice but by the unbearable truth that filled their souls. For in that moment they understood that all their pride, all their history, all their dreams were nothing but echoes of a greater age, and the true masters of the galaxy had returned.